I worked tirelessly for a year to lead a multi-million-dollar project to success. When HR emailed me about my promotion, I thought my dedication had finally paid off. But 2 days later, the email vanished. HR claimed they never sent it. Then I watched stunned as my boss stood before the executives and presented my work as his own. He even forged my signature. He thought I'd stay quiet. He was wrong. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 35, married, and a project manager at a tech company in downtown Chicago. For the past 6 years, I've worked in the same windowless office on the 12th floor of a building that smells like burnt coffee and ambition. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. I'm not the kind of guy who plays politics. I don't schmooze or gossip in the break room. I don't show up at every happy hour or pretend to like people. I don't. I just do my job, and I do it well. My wife, Claire, says I'm the quiet backbone type. I'll take that. Earlier this year, our company, Virion Tech, announced a major restructuring. That word alone is enough to make most employees sweat. But for me, it was an opportunity. The higher-ups were looking to promote from within, especially in middle management. Positions like senior project lead were opening up roles I'd had my eye on for years. At the same time, we'd just landed a huge client, a Fortune 500 retailer that wanted to overhaul their internal logistics system. It was a massive contract, the kind that could make or break a department. And guess who got tapped to lead the project? Me. I'd like to say I celebrated. But honestly, I felt the weight of it before the joy leading a multi-million-dollar rollout with a team of 20 developers, 5 analysts, and a tight 6-month timeline wasn't exactly light work. Still, I was ready. This was my shot, and I wasn't going to miss. Over the next few months, I poured everything into that project. I worked nights. I skipped vacations. I missed family dinners, and I lost more sleep than I care to admit. I became the guy who always had a laptop in his backpack and coffee in his veins. And you know what? It paid off. We delivered early. Not only that, the client was thrilled. 0 bugs, seamless integration, and we even saved them more money than projected. It was the kind of success that doesn't go unnoticed. Even in a company as big as ours, the week after we wrapped the project, I got an email. It was from HR, simple subject line, promotion recommendation, Ethan Cole. I remember staring at it for a second, unsure if I was dreaming. I clicked it open. It said I was being recommended for the new senior project lead role pending final executive approval. They would make the announcement at the next quarterly meeting. My heart skipped. This was it. After years of being the dependable guy behind the scenes, someone had finally seen me. That night, I went home and told Claire. She cried. Then I called my parents. My dad, who never shows emotion, just said, "I knew you had it in you," and that was enough. At work, I didn't say anything publicly, not yet, but I told a few trusted teammates, the ones who'd worked late nights with me. Everyone was thrilled. Even they said, "It's about time." I walked into the office the next day with my head a little higher. For once, I felt like the sacrifices were worth it. And then, things got strange. The morning after I received the promotion email, I sat at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, staring at the message again. I even flagged it in bright red. It was real. I didn't imagine it. But 2 days later, I noticed something odd. The email was gone. Not in my inbox, not in my archive, not even in my trash. I searched every folder, every keyword. Nothing like it never existed. I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was some glitch. I mean, it's a tech company. Bugs happen, right? I called HR, asked politely if they could resend the message, but the woman on the other end. Jenna paused too long before responding. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she said slowly, "but I don't see any record of that email. Are you sure you received it from us?" I felt my stomach twist. "Yes," I replied. It had a subject line: "Promotion recommendation, Ethan Cole." "You guys sent it last Thursday, around 2:00 p.m. I could hear her typing. Then another pause. "I'm not seeing anything like that in our sent logs. If you can forward us a copy, we can look into it." "But it's gone," I said, feeling heat rise in my face. "It vanished." "Without a copy," she said gently, "I'm afraid there's not much we can do." I hung up, unsettled. That afternoon, I went back through every inch of my inbox. Nothing. I even checked the server backup portal, a feature most employees didn't even use. Still blank. The next day, the weirdness continued. Our department had a leadership review meeting. Richard, my direct manager, stood at the front of the conference room addressing the VP and other execs. He was wearing his usual smug smile, the kind that made your skin crawl without knowing why. He pulled up a slide deck, and I froze. It was my deck. The same presentation I had spent weeks preparing, with the diagrams, the metrics, even the quirky slide titles I'd come up with. Only this time, it had his name on the front. No mention of me. And then he said the words that made my jaw clench. This strategy was a turning point for our client's success. I led the initiative, personally, with support from my team. Support. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I looked around the room, but no one questioned it. They all nodded, impressed. After the meeting, I approached him. "Richard," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "why did you present my work without credit?" He smiled, as if I'd just asked about the weather. "Ethan," he said, "everything that goes through this department is a team effort. You know that. We all win together." That wasn't an answer. That was a warning. I walked back to my desk, still fuming. Was this about the promotion? Was he trying to sabotage me? By the end of the week, I noticed my calendar looked emptier than usual. No meeting invites, no strategy sessions. I wasn't included in the next big project roadmap. Then I overheard something in the break room. Two junior analysts were talking quietly near the coffee machine. One of them said, "Yeah, Richard told me. Ethan wasn't really ready for senior management. Said he struggles with high-level thinking." I stepped in before they noticed me and walked away. But the damage was done. Richard was poisoning the well, and it was working. People were starting to look at me differently, like I was a guy who had peaked. A guy who got lucky with one project and was now slowly fading into irrelevance. I didn't know what to do. Claire noticed it first. At dinner, one night she asked, "You okay? You've been quiet lately?" I didn't know how to explain the feeling of being erased. "It's like someone's rewriting my story at work," I told her, "and I can't prove any of it." She reached across the table and held my hand. "Then maybe it's time you start writing your own ending?" I smiled weakly. She always had a way with words, but words wouldn't be enough this time. The next Monday, I sat at my desk trying to focus. That's when my friend Nate stopped by. Nate worked in the IT security team we'd bonded years ago over fantasy football and a shared hatred of vending machine tuna sandwiches. He leaned on my cubicle wall. "You good man. You look like you've been run over by a bus." I hesitated, then lowered my voice. "Hey, weird question. Is it possible to see who accessed my email account last week? Like, logins? IPs, that kind of thing. Nate raised an eyebrow. Why? Something happened. I nodded. Yeah, something big. And I think someone might have deleted something important. He didn't ask more, just looked at me for a moment, then said, I'll check. Quietly, I nodded, grateful beyond words. As he walked away, a tiny flicker of hope sparked in my chest. If someone had tampered with my account, there had to be a trail. And if there was a trail, maybe I wasn't crazy after all. 3 days passed. Nate finally pinged me on Slack. Nate, 10:37 a.m. Got something. Not on company record. Meet me in the parking lot after lunch. That was all he said. No emojis, no jokes. I felt my pulse quicken at 1:15 p.m. I walked outside, pretending to take a call. Nate was already leaning against his car, holding a sealed manila envelope. He glanced around before handing it over. You didn't get this from me. I opened it. Inside were 2 printed pages. One showed a login to my email account from an unregistered internal device at 2:57 a.m. The exact night my promotion email vanished. The others was a snapshot of an internal email request. Please delete all messages flagged, promotion recommendation, Ethan Cole, including backup copies, requested by Richard M. Stanton. My hands were shaking. He had gone into the system, impersonated IT credentials, and erased the message. Then he scrubbed backup logs, but not well enough. You can't take this to HR, Nate warned. Not yet. You need more. They'll say it's not definitive proof that someone else could have used his login, or it was a mistake. I nodded slowly. I needed a plan. That night, I couldn't sleep. Claire watched me pacing the living room at 2 a.m. You have the proof, she said. Why not expose him? Because if I bring it up now, he'll bury me before I can get leverage. I need a move he doesn't see coming. She studied me. Then give him exactly what he wants. I paused. What do you mean? She smiled faintly. Let him think he's won. Let him get arrogant. That's when people get sloppy. She was right. So the next morning, I changed my approach. I smiled more at work. I stopped pushing for credit. I acted like I was stepping back, like maybe I was burnt out. Richard took the bait. He started assigning more of my responsibilities to others. Told people I was moving into more of a support role. He even invited me to lunch one afternoon, like we were old friends again. Over coffee, he leaned in and said, You know, Ethan, you've got a good head on your shoulders, but not everyone's meant to lead. Sometimes the best support players have the biggest impact. I wanted to punch him, but I smiled. Maybe you're right, I said. I just want what's best for the team, he beamed. It made me sick. Then came the Q3, launch our biggest product rollout of the year, and Richard made his boldest move yet. He presented another strategy that had originated in my team, my notes, my flowcharts, even my phrasing, and claimed it entirely as his own. He even name-dropped 2 junior analysts as co-creators. I wasn't mentioned once. That day I sat in the back of the conference room watching him get a standing ovation. I clenched my fists under the table. This was it. This was the bottom. 2 weeks later, the setup begins. I called in a favor from an old mentor, Karen Rosenthal, a respected PR executive who now ran an independent media firm. She owed me from years back when I'd helped her out during a client scandal. I explained everything. The email deletion, the stolen credits, the campaign manipulation, the toxic manipulation of junior staff. She listened carefully, then said, Do you want revenge or justice? Both, I said. She smiled. Then you'll need to be precise. Together we started crafting a plan. Step 1. The canary email, using Nate's help. I created a fake internal email, a harmless test message about an imaginary confidential project, and sent it to my own account under a secondary alias I hadn't used in months. I then waited. 3 days later, it disappeared. That meant Richard was still monitoring me. Perfect. Step 2. The real trap. I prepared a new campaign concept, bold, aggressive, and just a little outside company norms, something that would seem tempting, but risky. I left vague drafts in my open folders and discussed them loudly on Zoom calls, where Richard was a silent participant. Then I planted the perfect version, polished, presentable, ready to steal, in a hidden drive labeled Q4 Concept, Draft Only. I made sure it referenced a major celebrity endorsement, knowing Richard would be too ambitious to resist. And just like clockwork, the following week he presented that exact idea to the board without approval. He even forged email trails that made it look like he had sent it to legal weeks ago. But the real twist? The celebrity. I'd referenced a retired NFL quarterback had already publicly denounced our company months ago. His name was a no-go, strictly blacklisted. So when Richard pitched it in the meeting, legal immediately flagged it. He stammered, trying to recover. I was told this had been cleared. By who, they asked. He looked cornered. Ethan, didn't you confirm this? With legal? I shrugged. I never touched that campaign. I was assigned elsewhere. The room went silent. Step 3. The internal leak. Karen helped me anonymously leak Richard's entire pattern of behavior to a mid-tier business news blog, one known for exposing corporate scandals. But we did it with style. The article was framed as "Is corporate sabotage the new ladder climbing tactic?" And it used a thinly veiled version of our company with quotes from insiders about data manipulation, credit theft, and PR missteps. It didn't name Richard, but the profile was unmistakable. The piece went semi-viral on LinkedIn. It rattled the board. HR sent out a mandatory conflict of ethics audit, and Richard's name came up multiple times. That was when the dominoes started falling. Step 4. The final blow. Nate provided one final gift, a server audit showing that Richard's credentials were used not just to delete my email, but to modify multiple project timelines, reassign credit lines, and erase contributor records. I compiled all of it, then requested a private meeting with the VP and legal. When I walked in, I handed them the full file. No drama, no accusations, just a quiet. I believe our company deserves better than this. They didn't say much, but I knew. It was done. The fallout. Richard was placed on administrative leave the next day. 3 weeks later, he was gone. No goodbye email. No party. Just silence. The board issued a vague statement about ethical misalignment. His entire digital footprint inside the company was scrubbed. But the best part, the VP asked me to represent the Q3 and Q campaigns this time under my name. When I finished, he said, "Why didn't you speak up sooner?" I smiled. "Sometimes it's better to let people bury themselves," he laughed. "Well, you've got a future here, Ethan. Let's talk next steps." The emotional crash. That night, I drove home in silence. Claire met me at the door. "It's done," I whispered. She didn't ask as how, just hugged me. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was tired. Months of gaslighting. of feeling invisible, of pretending to be weak so I could rise again. Justice wasn't clean. It came with scars, but it was real. I never liked chess, but revenge. That game, I understood now. Richard had spent months erasing me from meetings, from records, from recognition, but I'd used that erasure as a blueprint. Every time he covered a track, I noted how. Every time he took a risk, I logged what made him bold. And then I built my own strategy. A slow, quiet checkmate. The canary. Email was my opening move. It was simple, an internal message, referencing a high-level confidential project sent to myself using a barely used alias account. Harmless on the surface, just enough bait to trigger Richard's suspicion. 3 days later, it vanished. No record, no trace, that told me everything I needed. He was still watching me, still nervous. I'd come back. He thought he was outsmarting me, but in reality, he was stepping right into my net. Next was the real trap, the Q4 campaign concept. It was bold, risky, laced with just enough brilliance that it would be irresistible to someone who couldn't generate a single original idea of his own. I spoke about it loudly on Zoom. I left diagrams on shared drives, notes scattered across MeSC folders. Then the jewel, a presentation deck referencing a controversial celebrity endorsement buried inside a folder labeled Q4, Ethan Draft, Do Not Share. He took the bait like clockwork. He presented it to the board a week later as his own. He even faked email chains saying he'd gotten it cleared with legal. But what he didn't know, that celebrity, a retired NFL quarterback, had publicly slammed our company over a year ago during a labor lawsuit. Legal had blacklisted him across all departments. So when Richard dropped his name mid-pitch, the general counsel practically turned purple. "Excuse me," legal interrupted. "That individual is off limits. Who cleared this?" Richard stumbled. This was pre-approved. I was told Ethan, didn't you?" I looked up calmly from my seat. "I've been focused on support projects. I wasn't briefed on this campaign." Silence. You could feel the air freeze in that room. But I wasn't done. A few days later, the article dropped. Karen had worked her media magic, turning my story into a razor-sharp exposé under the headline, "The Silent Saboteur: How Ambition is Undermining Integrity in Tech Culture." No company names, no direct quotes, but everyone in the industry could connect the dots. A senior manager stealing campaigns, using backdoor ATA access, silencing whistleblowers, undermining juniors for personal gain. It blew up on LinkedIn within 24 hours. People were commenting, tagging their own horror stories. Executives whispered. Recruiters posted thoughts about ethical leadership. My inbox lit up with support from people I hadn't heard from in years. Internally, things got tense fast. HR launched a quiet ethics review. Then came the server logs, Nate's final gift. It wasn't just one incident. Richard had been manipulating project records for months, shifting credit lines, removing contributor tags, even adjusting timestamps to backdate approvals. I packaged everything, screenshots, logs, metadata, Slack timestamps, and asked for a meeting with the VP and our lead legal counsel. When I walked in, I didn't rant. I didn't accuse. I just placed the folder on the table, audible, and said, "I believe the culture we've built here deserves better than this. I'm ready to answer any questions you have." They said nothing, but I saw the look in their eyes. The decision was already made. The next morning, Richard's name disappeared from the org chart, administrative leave. That's how they framed it. but we all knew what it meant. There was no farewell message, no final Zoom, no thank you for your service, just radio silence. His digital fingerprint wiped his projects, reassigned. And me? The VP called me into his office the following Monday. We'd like you to represent the Q3 and Q campaigns, he said, this time properly credited. When I finished, he leaned back impressed. You had this in you the whole time, didn't you? I smiled faintly. Sometimes it's better to let people show who they really are, he nodded. Let's talk. Leadership track, full ownership. I shook his hand. It was done, but the celebration never came. That night, I got home late. Claire was on the couch, flipping through a book. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, then finally whispered, "It's over." She didn't ask how, just walked over and hugged me. I thought I'd feel triumphant, validated. Instead, I felt exhausted. You okay? She asked gently. I nodded. I just didn't realize how much it cost me because revenge, real revenge, doesn't come with applause. It comes with silence and bruises you don't see, but in that silence, there's clarity. Richard had tried to erase me. Instead, he erased himself 6 months later. I stood at the front of the room. Same conference table, same skyline view. But this time, I was leading the meeting, VP of Strategy. Not just a title, a recognition, an earned one. People looked at me differently now, not with fear, not with flattery, but respect. And I carried myself differently too, less eager to please, more sure of my worth. Nate was promoted as well. Claire finally opened that art studio she'd always dreamed of. And the junior analyst Richard used to manipulate. I brought them into the fold, gave them real opportunities, let them shine. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about rebuilding what they tried to break and making it stronger. One afternoon, I passed Richard's old office, now empty, the nameplate gone. For a second, I paused. Part of me wondered where he landed, if he was still spinning lies somewhere else. But I didn't care enough to find out, because the truth was, he lost long before I won. He lost the moment he started playing dirty, thinking no one would ever call his bluff. And I won the moment I stopped playing defense and took back control. That night, Claire and I sat on the balcony, sipping wine. You look lighter, she said. I nodded. I guess I finally let it go, she smiled. You didn't just get justice. You got your voice back. I looked up at the stars, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free.